perfect, converting the soul. The testimony of the Lord is sure, making wise the simple. More to be desired are they than gold, yea, than much fine gold. Sweeter also than honey, and the honeycomb. The statutes of the Lord are right, rejoicing the heart. The commandment of the Lord is pure, enlightening the eyes. More to be desired are they than gold, yea, than much fine gold. Sweeter also than honey, and the honeycomb. The fear of the Lord is clean, enduring forever. The judgments of the Lord are true and righteous altogether. More to be desired are they than gold, yea, than much fine gold. Sweeter also than honey, and the honeycomb. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be accepted in thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer. More to be desired are they than gold, yea, than much fine gold. Sweeter also than honey, and the honeycomb. And in keeping of them there is great reward, there is great reward. And in keeping of them there is great reward. Lord, I come, I confess, bowing here, I find my rest, and without you, I fall apart. You're the one that guides my heart. Lord, I need you, oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. Where sin runs deep, your grace is more. Where grace is found is where you are. And where you are, Lord, I am free. Holiness is Christ in me. Where you are, Lord, I am free. all of creation, all that I see.
Okay. Good evening. It's good to see everyone here this evening, especially if you're visiting with us. Good to have family back home and college students back home with us. And we have a lot more traveling. Many of our members are on the road right now, and other family members are headed this way. So let's not forget to keep all the travelers in our prayers tonight and in the coming days. We want to begin this evening by reminding you of two scheduling notes. This coming Sunday, we will have one service at 2 in the afternoon. There won't be Bible class, just one service at 2 in the afternoon. And the elders really hope this encourages good attendance at service this Sunday. So we want to mention that to you. Next Wednesday, a week from today, next Wednesday, we're going to be hosting an area-wide, Prince William County-wide hymn sing at 6:30, from 6:30 to 7:30. And so Woodbridge and Dale City are going to be bringing their song leaders, and hopefully our song leaders will be here too, some of them, and we'll have a hymn sing. Looking forward to that. At 7:30 at our regular time, we'll be having a devotional. And then at 8 o'clock to 9:30, we'll be having fellowship in our fellowship room with our brothers and sisters from Dale City and Woodbridge. And there'll be board games and puzzles on the table. And you're encouraged to bring any finger foods or pastries that you'd like to bring. Feel free to artistically replate and bring any of your Christmas cookies or treats that you have left over. And at the end of the night, I will throw them away for you, and there will be no guilt that you have wasted some really fine baked goods. So anyway, we're looking forward to that, and that's next Wednesday evening. So we have changes for our next two services we wanted to make you aware of. Just some folks to keep in prayer. Daniel Langston is now home, recovering from his second emergency appendectomy of the year. Francisco Perazza had surgery on his eardrum today. I don't know that we had results from that. I didn't get any myself. Okay, but let's keep him in prayers. And Jim and Rita Webster's daughter Rebecca had her surgery today. Haven't heard how that went either. Let's not forget that next Tuesday, Alean Wilson, this is Bryce and Bailey's daughter, will be having hip surgery. We heard earlier this week that Zerl Watson, Ed Work's brother-in-law, will have spine surgery in the new year, lumbar decompression and a lumbar disectomy in the L4 and 5 area of his spine. So that's going to be, I'm sure, a long convalescence. Let's keep him in prayers. We also heard this morning that our brother Gary Rouse, who was in Florida with Tracy, was involved in an automobile accident yesterday, and he suffered several broken ribs, a lacerated spleen, and a broken hand. He's in the hospital and will be there for a few days. So let's keep him in prayer. Let's not forget that Naomi Jean continues in the NICU and will be for at least another week or so. And she continues to do well, but needs the attention she's getting there in the NICU at Virginia Hospital Center. And so we have many others who are on our prayer list. We do want you to consult your announcements from this evening for a fuller listing of those names. Okay, we're going to have some upcoming events in January. They're also on your announcement sheet. David Woolard would like to say a word about cocoa caroling and cookies, and after that we'll have a few songs and a prayer, and then we'll be dismissed to our Bible classes. David? There you go.
Yeah, just wanted to remind everybody about the caroling. We do have enough carolers. That doesn't mean we have them signed up. If everybody comes, we'll have about 15, which is barely the number we need to sound good out there. But now we need everybody to also encourage your friends, family, and everybody you know to drive by. We're trending number 5 on Google in the area for caroling events. Just so you know, so people don't believe you, have them put in Manassas, caroling, and look for the 5th item down, and they will see us. And then they'll say, oh, it is real. It's on Google. It must be real. But I'm telling you, it is real. We still need a few cookies, so if you have extra cookies that you'd like to drop off, Saturday before 3:30, because it starts at 3:30, we would really love to get your cookies. We have some. Thank you for those that have brought them, and we could use a few more. And remember, it's Saturday, 3:30. If you're going to sing, be here a little bit earlier. And I'm going to try to have a heater out front, so you won't be standing in the cold. You'll be heated a little bit, okay?
Good night. We'll be singing 598, Standing on the Promises. After that, we'll have a prayer before we go off to class.
Standing on the promises of Christ my King, through tribulations let His praises ring. Glory in the highest I will shout and sing. Standing on the promises of God. Standing on the promises of God, my Savior. I'm standing on the promises of God. Standing on the promises that cannot fail. When the howling storms of doubt and fear assail, by the living word of God I shall prevail. Standing on the promises of God. Standing on the promises of God, my Savior. I'm standing on the promises of God. Standing on the promises of Christ the Lord. Bound to Him eternally by love's strong cord. Overcoming daily with the Spirit's sword. Standing on the promises of God. Standing on the promises of God, my Savior. I'm standing on the promises of God. Standing on the promises that cannot fall. Listening every moment to the Spirit's call. Resting in my Savior as my all in all. Standing on the promises of God. Standing on the promises of God, my Savior. I'm standing on the promises of God.
Let's pray. Father God, we are grateful for all of the blessings that you provide us and you give us. We're especially thankful for this body of believers here, and pray for us, Lord, that we will love you and bring glory to you and bear the fruit of the Spirit. Be with us tonight as we are studying your word. Pray that we will be edified and encouraged by it, and that we will put it to use. Thank you for those who are teaching and are volunteering. We ask for blessings for them as well. And pray all these things in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Okay. Yeah, still there. All right. Okay. All right. It's always weird. I never know when quite to start on a Wednesday evening. You want to leave a little bit of room for the adults who go out and put their kids in class, but you don't want to go too long, otherwise you're just wasting everyone's time. You know it's going to be a good class when the teacher brings two versions up today. Okay, so James is out of town for the next couple of weeks, and he has asked me to cover him at least this first week. We are in Nehemiah, for those of you just joining us this week. We are in Nehemiah chapter 2. Nehemiah chapter 2 today. And just as a recap, can anyone tell me what Nehemiah has been up to this point? Up to this point in the text, what has been Nehemiah's title? Cupbearer. Cupbearer to whom? King of Persia. King, emperor, king of kings, emperor, that use the title kind of interchangeably there. So the particular king he is the cupbearer to is Artaxerxes, which, if you're going by chronological order, is few people down from the start of the Persian Empire. So it goes Cyrus. If I make a mistake, please correct me on this one. It goes Cyrus, then weird sort of transitional period between one of Cyrus's sons, Cambyses, and then another person comes in, possibly a wizard. Not making that up. The exact title is Magi or Magus, which has translated to wizard or sorcerer. And then comes King Darius. King Darius is the next emperor. And then his son, I believe, is Artaxerxes. Pretty sure that's how the chronology goes. So there's a lot of time in between first of all, there's a lot of time between the Babylonian captivity, when the people of Jerusalem were taken from Jerusalem into Babylon. And then in the book of Ezra, the first of these exiles first major group of exiles are returned under the Persian authority. And then now Nehemiah is leading a second wave of returning exiles. And so our text today is basically going to be what Nehemiah sees when he gets back to Jerusalem. So, Nehemiah chapter 2, starting in verse 11. I'm going to be primarily using the New International Version, but I will also be using a separate translation that I'll get to in a moment. So, Nehemiah chapter 2, verse 11, and I'm going to be reading through verse 20. So, I went to Jerusalem, and after staying there 3 days, I set out during the night with a few others. I had not told anyone what God had put in my heart to do for Jerusalem. There were no mounts with me except the one that I was riding on. By night I went out through the valley gate towards the jackal well and the dung gate, examining the walls of Jerusalem, which had been broken down, and its gates which had been destroyed by fire. Then I moved towards the fountain gate and the king's pool, but there was not enough room for my mount to get through, so I went up the valley by night, examining the wall. Finally I turned back and re-entered through the valley gate. The officials did not know where I had gone or what I was doing, because as yet I had said nothing to the Jews or to the priests or nobles or officials or anyone who would be doing the work. So I'm going to pause there for a moment just to go over what Nehemiah is doing. So basically, just from this, what's he doing? What is Nehemiah doing right here? He's inspecting the walls. Why is he doing that? What's the purpose in doing the inspection here?
I mean, what's the work that has to be done?
See how bad it is. See what exactly he's getting into. I just want to put this timeline in come back to the timeline here and put this in perspective. The fall of Jerusalem is Barry. What's the year on that? Yeah.
It's 5.
Somewhere in the early 500s BC, 580 something ish, in the 580s BC. Babylon is captured by the Persians in between around 539. So there's about 50 years there, 50 years between when the fall of Jerusalem happens and the fall of Babylon happens. Yep.
Record where they talk about 70 years of captivity, but that can date back to when the Babylonians took control of Jerusalem and took the first captives, like Ezekiel.
Yeah.
That group. But the actual fall of Jerusalem was later than that, so that's 5 years ago.
So there's a little bit of fudging of the chronology, I'll say. A lot of the prophets and a lot of our cultural understanding calls this a 70-year captivity. The Babylonian captivity, 70 years is very biblical, very long. It's essentially a full generation of captivity, but it is actually even longer than that. From when the city of Jerusalem falls to when Nehemiah returns. His return, this copy of the study Bible that I have, pegs Nehemiah's return to Jerusalem in 444. So between 580-ish and 444, that's 140 years that the city of Jerusalem has not been desolate. It's not nothing. There's not nothing there. There's still a city there. There's still people there. But it is nowhere near the capital city of Judah that it was in the time of Hezekiah, in the time of Solomon, David, and the kings. So what Nehemiah is doing here is he's taking a look. He's been tasked by the emperor of Persia. He's been tasked to rebuild Jerusalem as a city. And so he goes on this basically a scouting mission at night. And he lists off a lot of different places, the sheep gate, the dung gate. He'll list a lot more in a later chapter. the Valley Gate. He talks about going down to the fountain, to the pool, to the King's Pool, I think is what he called it. One of the translations has it like that. And all of these places, all of the walls, all of the gates are destroyed. Yes?
So we need to back up to the first part of it where he said he was there 3 days.
Yep.
He was there, he didn't just go in and then go make an assessment stuff. He was there 3 days before he decided to do anything, after going hundreds of miles to rest. Also, there was time for him to pray and to get to know other people, but he rested 3 days, and Ezra did the same thing. When men of God, when you have an assignment, you'll notice that in Scripture, they don't just go blundering in and doing things. They wait, they listen, they pray, and see what God has, which is an example for us as believers also when we're doing things. You know, you can get a good idea, and my kids will tell you, I always say, some things are good, some things are better, but there's God's best. And what we want to be doing in our lives, not that some things are bad, but they're not just the best use of God's time and resources for us to do. So we want to be doing God's best when we do things. And that's what Nehemiah is doing. He's waiting to see what God, and he knows that this is a God thing, so he wants to see what, he's doing it in a way that is following God's lead.
So the waiting, the 3 days wait there, that's also going to be important a little bit later on. I'll touch on that in a little bit. But the other thing that I notice about this is that he's going out at night. He's going out relatively alone. He doesn't mention who all is with him, but it's not a lot of people. And he doesn't tell anyone what he's doing. How many times has he stopped on his route? How many times is he questioned? Or how many times does he mention being stopped by someone or asked what he's doing?
It's almost like checking security checkpoints and they're all failing.
Yes, thank you. He's doing a spot check. Has anyone ever worked with security or OSHA violations? He's doing a spot check, unexpected and unannounced, and they are failing spectacularly. In fact, this is where I want to go into this other translation. In our church library, we have this Hebrew Bible Robert Alter translation, new translation of just the Old Testament, strictly from Hebrew sources. Very good translation in our library. And I want to focus on chapter 2. Where is it? Yeah, there it is. I went out through the gate. Yep. I passed on to the gate of the spring and into the King's Pool, and I went up the wadi by the valley and inspected the wall, and came back and entered the gate of the valley and came back. The translation and this, the Jewish translation, actually uses the phrase, when he's talking about inspecting the walls, they actually use the phrase, he breached the walls. He went into the walls. He conquered the walls, essentially. He's using the same language as what a destroyed city would look like. This is definitely not the Jerusalem that was left, and this is definitely not the Jerusalem in a few hundred years' time. This is a destroyed city. But there are people here. This is not completely empty. This is not a barren hill. Ezra has already come through and rebuilt the temple. The temple is, the second temple is there on the Temple Mount. But it's missing the walls. The walls, the structures, the gates, everything has been torn down and stayed down. And we'll touch on that in just a moment. So this is very important in what you're saying saying just a second ago about doing things. There's the fast way, there's the good way, and then there's God's way. He waits for 3 days. He's not immediately coming in, "Hi, gang, we're going to change everything right now." No, he's not one of these change everything immediately types. He waits for 3 days, and I also think he's kind of waiting for someone to tell him what's going on. There are other leaders. There are leaders here. There's a community here. And no one's approached him about what needs to be done. And then it says, "I had not told anyone what God had put in my heart to do for Jerusalem." He was waiting to see if someone else had the same idea, if someone else had the same plan. And then when no one did, then he decided to do it for himself. So let's continue on through the end of the chapter. So he's come back from his scouting mission. Verse 17. "Then I said to them, 'You see the trouble we are in. Jerusalem lies in ruins, and its gates have been burned with fire. Come, let us rebuild the wall of Jerusalem, and we will no longer be in disgrace.' I also told them about the gracious hand of my God on me, and what the king had said to me. They replied, 'Let us start rebuilding.' So they began this good work. But when Sanballat the Horonite, Tobiah the Ammonite official, and Geshem the Arab heard about it, they mocked and ridiculed us. 'What is this you are doing?' they asked. 'Are you rebelling against the king?' And I answered them by saying, 'The God of heaven will give us success. We, his servants, will start rebuilding, but as for you, you have no share in Jerusalem or any claim or right to it.'" So Nehemiah, once he says, "Okay, we need to rebuild the walls and the gates. We have the temple. We need to rebuild the rest of the city." The Jewish leaders, the Jewish officials, and the Jewish people are all for it. They are immediately behind Nehemiah. They are very much in favor of this. But there are 3 officials that aren't. So this is where a little bit of historical background kind of comes in. The Horonites, the Ammonites, and the Arabs. So this is the first time that the phrase or the word Arab specifically is used to refer to a group of people in the Old Testament. I'm pretty sure. Chronologically. There was a commentary that I was looking at. I cannot remember the place that I read it, but it's interesting here that the Arab official is mentioned, but not the Edomite. We have an Ammonite, which is a historical enemy of Judea. We have the Horonite, I can never see, which are peoples sort of to the north, on the northern part of Judea. And then we have the Arab, who was in the southern part of Judea at this time. Some commentators and some historians think that by this time the Edomites have been absorbed or conquered into the Arab culture, the Arab people, the Arab world. So this is kind of the beginnings of switch over between Arab and Edomite people. Does that make sense? 19. Geshem the Arab. Could be another translation. What translation do you have?
Story that none of them wanted to give back.
Right.
Because they had began to go over there. They were utilizing their farmland where the animals had been, and they saw this land as a very beautiful land that had flourished. They never wanted to see the God of the Israelites, who had been a conquering God, to actually rebuild because of their own fear of what they might face. But I think that the thing that is always interesting to me is that Nehemiah had a mentality about his faith in his God that was not evident with the other Jews that were actually there. And if you're facing enemies of these nations that were there, you have to have it in your mind and in your heart and in your spirit that you're going to go do the work. And so it's not really a surprise that the Jews that were actually there, if these three bullies were actually roaming around, discouraging them, second-guessing them, and not knowing that he had the letters that he did, they said, oh, does the king know what you're doing? It wasn't their king that they were speaking about. And so I think that there is something to be noted about Nehemiah's faith and his ability to go in there knowing that because when you look at the latter part of verses number 16, it tells you that these individuals, this priests and the nobles, who would have been doing the work, they knew they were supposed to be doing the work, but they weren't. To me, it was out of fear and a lack of faith.
I was going to say two things. One, Sanballat is one of the governors of the Euphrates. He has already received a letter from the king, so it's not like he doesn't know why Nehemiah is there. Nehemiah came with a letter.
Put a pin in that. I'm going to come back in that in a second.
And also, two things that Nehemiah said to the group. He said to them, he said, come let us rebuild the wall. I also told them that the gracious hand of God was upon us, and that the king, and what the king had said to me. So he is telling these people and encouraging them by the two authorities that they should be listening to, God Almighty and the king. So the two rulers that rule their lives have already encouraged him and given him the go-ahead to do this. So that's an encouragement. Don't be afraid, because we've got God with us, and we've also got the blessing of the king.
So you mentioned that we've already seen Sanballat earlier. And at the beginning of chapter 2, when Nehemiah is going out, the king sends him with letters. The king sent him with specifically 2 letters. First is the letter to the governors so that they would provide me safe conduct until I arrive in Judah. This is from verse 7. Chapter 2, verse 7, verse 8. And may I also have a letter to Asaph, keeper of the royal park, so he will give me timber to make beams for the gates of the citadel, by the temple and the city wall, and for the residence I will occupy. So, and then later on in verse 10, Sanballat the Horonite and Tobiah the Ammonite heard about this. They were very much disturbed that someone had come to promote the welfare of the Israelites. But these 2 letters don't, the letter given to him for the governors doesn't say what he's doing. They just say that he's coming through their territory. He's coming through their territory with a large host of people, but the purpose of Nehemiah's journey is never explicitly spelled out or told to anyone. That honestly to me seems a little bit strange. I don't know. I think if you're going to go to all this trouble, you'd want to make sure that everyone knew as much as possible that, hey, this is the purpose for my coming here. This is why I'm coming here. Yeah, Mark.
But if you're going to do something, especially if there might be a security risk or something wrong, and you don't know what you're dealing with, when you get here, you're the man that's on point, but you have no idea what you're dealing with and what you're going to find, then it would be prudent to not let anyone know what you're there for.
A certain level of secrecy on the mission. And I just wanted to, okay. Another thing that kind of flows from this is when he's confronted by the three officials, when he's confronted about rebuilding the walls, rebuilding the gates of Jerusalem, he's specifically asked, are you rebelling against the king? And what's his answer? What is Nehemiah's answer? Because this is a court official. This is a court official of Jewish heritage who has more than likely never set foot in Israel before this moment in his life. What's his response when he's asked about if he's rebelling against the king?
He basically ignores that question.
He ignores the question. Yes.
So, I get what you're saying, that the letters, we're not told that they specifically say what he's doing as he passes through.
Right.
But it doesn't say that it doesn't either, but we do get that they understand they're going there for the welfare of the Jewish people.
Right.
So if we take it from a different perspective, that they understood his purpose in going, now the question that they ask, right, are you planning on rebelling against the king? That is not for the purpose of questioning Nehemiah, that is for the purpose of putting in the minds of the Jewish people, do you understand what you're doing? You are rebelling against the king at this point. Nehemiah then says, it doesn't matter, we're doing what God says, playing on their faith. Because they don't have, like you said, if they had enough faith, they would rebuild the city. He's there to be a catalyst and say, I have the papers, but it is about God's will, and you're here to do God's will. These officials are trying to put fear back into people. He's saying, don't have to. God is here to make it successful.
The king can do what he wants to, and he doesn't need to explain anything. It's the king's order, and we don't question it. He doesn't need to tell, well, this is why I want to do it. That's number one. Number two is, Nehemiah now plays a political game, and he knows, I got the king's okay, but I'm not going to tell you that.
Yes.
He plays a very strategic game, but they don't need to know that he got the king's okay, but when they go to the king is going to tell them, well, he got my okay. You see what I'm saying? So it's a political game, but he puts God first to them.
Biblical politics is always so interesting.
Yeah, and I do think politics is part of what's at play here too, because if you look at the history of Persia, outside of what the Bible talks about, it's pretty clear that some of the governors of the different provinces rebelled against the king in different ways, in different areas. It was not a completely peaceful thing. So it is quite possible that, one, they were serious in their question, or it is possible that they were playing into the idea for their own political advantage, because it wasn't perhaps to their advantage that Jerusalem might rise and be more prosperous. So there's plenty of political questions going on in the place.
He's being as wise as a servant, I mean, he tips his hand too early, they can lawyer up early too. Get an injunction. No, seriously. They're all appealing to the and the same ruler. It's a massive bureaucracy, but it's efficient bureaucracy. And which is going to play out on the pages of Nehemiah, and it gets dicey at times, but you know, Jesus said you're going to be as harmless as a dove, you have to be as wise as a serpent. He's been as wise as a serpent.
Yes.
So I wanted to know, like, what resources did the Jewish people that were still in Judea, what did they have to rebuild the city? Because a lot of times these confirmations, they were sending all the levels back to the empire, so it was in the Persia or Babylon before that. So what resources would they have had by themselves to do it? Now you've got Nehemiah coming in with the stamp of the king saying, we can now do this. But like also, did he also bring resources to then do it? And if all the wealth was being sent back to Persia, would they have had the ability before that to rebuild?
So that's a very good question and a very, very complicated question. So the question is, what did the people of Judah at this time have in terms of resources? This is going to sound strange, but there's a reason in Nehemiah's letter to Asaph, he asks for wood. It's because there's not a lot of good lumber in Judah. There's not a lot of good not a lot of good woodworking wood. Woodworking wood. Yes, there. Okay. But what's he not asking for? That is very important when rebuilding a wall. Stone. There is a lot of stone in Judah. There is so much stone in Judah. There is almost a comical amount of stone in Judah. And it's a place of trade. It's a place basically on the way from one place to another place. It's the place on the road from Egypt to Babylon. It's on the road from Babylon to the Mediterranean. It's on the road from the Mediterranean to the southern Arabian Peninsula. It is the crossroads of the Middle East at this time. So they don't, the resources that they would have had as well, they would have had a lot of kind of just follow the gates that they name. They had the fish gate. That is the place where the fish came in from from what would be known as the Sea of Galilee, Lake Tiberias, coming in from the north. You had the fish. You had the sheep gate. That's more off to the northeastish. That's where you have a lot of pasture, a lot of sheep coming in. They would come through that gate. You had the horse gate, also to the east, a lot of horse grazing area. You had the fountain gate, that was close to the fountain itself. And then you had the dung gate. That wasn't a place so much of dung coming in as much as it was dung going out. That was the place where literally they took the dung out of Jerusalem into the valley of Hinnom and set it on fire. That's 4th century BC hygiene for you. Yes?
Walls, they didn't haul that stone away. It was not. We don't even think about the labor-intensive. I mean, how labor-intensive it was to destroy the walls of Jerusalem to begin with.
Yes.
They had explosives. They didn't have cranes. They didn't have wrecking balls. I mean, that's done by hand. They didn't haul that stuff away. It's just laying around. I mean, so really, the resources of the stone, much of the stone to rebuild the walls, would have been there. On site. The gates are the part, the metallurgy, the wood, the things, to rebuild the gates.
Yep.
That's where you need skill and you need resources. But the stone was there.
Specifically, so that they were burned by fire, so it's one of the fine. That's why they need all lumber.
Yes.
So if we look at Ezra, that's leading up to Nehemiah.
Yeah.
To read back the first couple of verses. And in Ezra, they're building the city. So the city, the wall, the temple, that they're all building, and they all get told to stop. It goes back and forth with a few letters. And they get approval, but it's interesting, the approval to resume is just for the temple.
Exactly.
All those potential materials and effort and everything in the city and the wall kind of is partially started, but just not completed. So I don't know for certain, but it seems like Nehemiah is finishing that job, not starting from scratch.
There's a reason in Jewish literature, Ezra and Nehemiah are just one book. It's not two separate narratives. It is the one narrative of the return. And like you said, in Ezra, if we had covered Ezra before, that would have been really obvious. But in Ezra, there's this start and stop. There's this enthusiasm. They get on site and they say, okay, we are going to rebuild Jerusalem. Okay, what part of Jerusalem? Yes, we are going to rebuild Jerusalem. All of it at once. Can we do that? No. So they are told to stop. They are told, just rebuild the temple. Rebuild the temple first. And then Nehemiah comes in and says, okay, we've rebuilt the temple. Now let's continue. We've taken the first step. Now let's take the next one. Sam,
Yeah, I was just going to say, as far as why Nehemiah wasn't too interested in answering the question, I mean, his answer was, I don't need your help. This is a God thing, and you have no part of that. So it's almost, you know, this is for Israel, this is not for anybody outside, so don't worry about it. And the rest of that, you know, I'm sure he knew already about the court order he had. If you want to check that out, we'll do it, but you have no part in this. But I think his real message was.
Yeah, that's very true. The reply of Nehemiah, the reply to the officials is very, very much a don't mess with us, we're not messing with you kind of an answer. It is very much a, we are rebuilding, but you don't worry about Jerusalem. Jerusalem is not yours. Jerusalem is ours. We are here. We are going to be rebuilding Jerusalem. Yeah.
What I was going to say is, I've been to Jerusalem and in that country, and it is nothing but stone. There are very few trees except in the fertile valleys. But it is stone everywhere. The mountains, everything is stone. And if you look at the homes, they're all built of stone. The buildings are stone. And when you go to the ruin of the temple, you see these huge, gigantic boulders that are there. And I asked someone, how did they cut them? How did they move them? They moved them by oxen. They were cut in the mountains and brought down. So it's nothing but stone there. So they had resources, but like you said, they didn't have trees. They had enough stone to do anything they wanted to do. And it's still there to this day.
The problem that those people had with Nehemiah, I think, goes back to the idea that, and you kind of hit on this, is it was going to impact their commerce. Okay? This goes back to who's in control, who's getting money. If Jerusalem isn't a city, then it's not a place where a lot of mercantile stuff is going on. And then there lies some of the you can see it, you can smell it, and go,
You kind of hit it on this earlier. I think political mindset of Xerxes is very interesting and relevant to the conversation, because he did not see the people as Israelites as being a threat. He didn't see the nation as being a threat, and he actually had a lot of high regard for the people in their faith in their God. From a political strategic perspective, he did not want the issues in other outlying areas. He didn't want issues with Egypt and other nations that were powerful. So I think it goes to play about understanding Nehemiah's relationship with the king enough to even put it forth, and the faith he had in God to do that. But I think that Xerxes' understanding of those who were captive, those who were servants, many of them being in high positions within his palace, and especially as a cupbearer, their relationship evolved. And I think that by the time he does go back and understand what's going on, he did it in a very trustworthy way for Nehemiah. Nehemiah understood his faith, and I think that as he began to, as it was alluded to earlier, take the temperature of the room of others. If there were others already there doing work, he would just lay his hand in and said, hey, I'm here to provide support. I brought additional resources with me, but they weren't doing that. And so when he encouraged them to be about the work, they were ready to move. And of course, anyone who is trying to go about that, you always have to be mindful of those who are naysayers.
There's a lot of stuff about just rebuilding the city of Jerusalem, as to why each different group and each different faction and each different people would either want it built or not want it built. The people further off, Artaxerxes is in Babylon, he's in Susa, he's in Ecbatana, he's in basically Iran at this point, and he's seeing things from a higher up imperial perspective. He sees things a lot wider. Nehemiah is seeing things from the perspective of a Jewish man. He is seeing things, he's seeing his city is not thriving. It is not what it should be, not what it could be. And he sees a way to kind of build on and to rebuild the city of Jerusalem. And the three officials are seeing things from a historical enemy perspective. They are seeing that their rival, their historic enemy, is about to come back and about to be powerful again. Are they going to be in a conquering mood again? There's a question in there about if they're rebelling against the king. If they're rebelling against the king and setting up their own new kingdom, then that spells trouble for them from the kingdom of Judah. If they're not rebelling against the king, and this is on the king's orders, then that spells trouble for them because now they are the ones who are going against the king in preventing the city from being built.
As Israel, or right? Like, they're there with other people.
Yes.
The king sends them there because it is a great trade route. They've been going conquering. It makes sense, right? You want a good, strong city set up for your trade route. But Nehemiah's answer is amazing, because it's, yes, the king sent me, but ultimately God sent me to do this. And God's going to make sure that we are going to be able to rebuild the city, rebuild the city. And so you have the others that are against it, because right now they run it, right? Or they're part of it. Once Jerusalem regains its identity and the Jewish people regain their identity, they know they're out.
Well, the people that are naysayers, and it's like, why are you attempting to build the wall? It's like the resignation that these people have has been eaten into them by the people around them. It's like, why are you bothering us?
Well, Well, then also part was created by our consumer data. Right? Why do they need walls for protection when they have for
And Nehemiah's he's not an idiot, so when they ask this question, are you rebelling against the king, he doesn't really address it. Because he knows, like everyone's saying, this was more political. This is them wanting Jews to not build the wall. They didn't really think that they were going to rebel. They just wanted to poke at them. And that's why Nehemiah doesn't even bother really addressing their question, because he knows really what they're after. And as you read through the coming chapters, you can see that. They're constantly just trying to wear him down and stop the building.
I agree with what Mike's saying, and what Barry said though about the serpent, because we've all seen it. There's a verse in Michael knows better than mine where it said about the people of the world are wiser than God's children, because they will try and talk to you. We've all seen it. People will try and be your friend and talk to you. They want you to reveal something to them. Barry was right when he said, wise as a serpent. Always polite to somebody, always nice, but do not reveal the earth. They will try and find out whatever they can. And okay, donkey said the grass is blue, keep on walking.
That's a good point. That's a good note to end on. Nehemiah does not answer their question, and he doesn't answer their question because he doesn't need to. We don't have to get into these arguments. We don't have to argue with fools. We don't have to argue with the people who are going against us. If we are doing what God says, if we are doing what God has put on our hearts, then we don't need to explain that if the people are asking stupid questions. So the next time we meet, and we are going to get out of here a little bit early, Merry Christmas. Next time we meet, next Wednesday is the area-wide hymn sing thing. And then coming back in January, we'll restart in chapter 3. Just going to warn you now, chapter 3 is a little bit dense with a lot of people and a lot of gates and a lot of names, proper names, capitalized names. Don't be afraid. It's all important to read. Just kind of read between the lines on some of those. I don't have anything else to say, so have a nice night.
Oh, how good it is when the family of God dwells together in spirit, in faith and unity, where the bonds of peace, of acceptance and love are the fruit of His presence here among us. So with one voice we'll sing to the Lord, and with one voice we'll lift out His word, till the whole earth sees the Redeemer has come, for He dwells in the presence of His people. Oh, how good it is on this journey we share, to rejoice with the happy and weep with those who mourn, for the weak find strength, the afflicted find grace, when we offer the blessing of belonging. So with one voice we'll sing to the Lord, and with one voice we'll lift out His word, till the whole earth sees he dwells in the presence of his people. So with one voice we'll sing to the Lord, and with one voice we'll lift out his word, till the whole earth sees the Redeemer has come, for he dwells in the presence of his people. For he dwells in the presence of his people. The law of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul. The testimony of the Lord is sure, making wise the simple. More to be desired are they than gold, yea, than much fine gold. Sweeter also than honey, and the honeycomb. The statutes of the Lord are right, rejoicing the heart.